the meeting. That way we can kind of get going here. So everybody, thank you for joining us via WebEx. This is certainly new in this sensitive times, but we're making it through and we're using technology to our advantage. So appreciate everyone being here. Thank you. And with that, we will call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of conflicts?
None. No.
All right, seeing none. Can I get approval of the agenda, please?
So moved, Greg Munn.
Okay, Greg. And do I have a seconder?
Second, Brian Gillis.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I'll just say, is there anyone opposed?
None.
Okay, perfect. Adoption of minutes from the design review meeting on March 13th. And mover and a seconder.
I'll move the minutes, Brian Gillis.
Okay, move.
Second, Greg Munn.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, see nothing. All right, is there any business arising from those minutes?
None.
Okay, hearing none. All right, let's move right into reports. So the first one we're going to do today is 7173 Upper Prince Street. And Robert, if you are there, you take over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the application before you today is regards to 7173 Upper Prince Street. It's an existing 5-unit apartment building. This property went under official plan redesignation.
Robert, can you start again? You blanked out there for about 15 seconds.
Okay, sure. So the subject property is 7173 Upper Prince Street. This property went through zoning and official plan amendments. That was to change the zone and the designation to medium density residential to allow for 6 additional apartment units to be added on. As part of the condition of that approval, it was to go through design review to ensure that the addition maintained the unique architectural elements of the Second Empire style of the existing building. Next slide. This is the subject property. It was in 2 lots, and it's currently going through a lot consolidation so that it becomes one complete property. Therefore, the existing building and the addition will be completely on one property and not covering a common property line. So that's in the process right now. Next slide. Current design, when it initially came to council and planning board for approval of the zoning and OP redesignation amendments, and when we sent this design back to our external designer reviewer, which was Aaron Stafford, Aaron made some comments and provided some feedback.
Hi, Alan. Do you need to be with them there? Am I bugging you there?
Just one quick second here.
Sure.
So, I can.
Okay, I won't bother you. I can see everybody. I don't know if they can see me. I can see all the plans and all that, but I can I can't hear anything.
Just one second.
Really? Yeah. No. I just see. I can see your initials there, EC, with a little mic.
Is the volume up? Okay, folks, listen. I would ask that while the presentation is being done, if everyone can put their microphone on mute, that would be very helpful. Once we get into the questions, and I open it to the floor, then
Craig Rivard. Anyway, I guess I'm just gonna. I can see now. I've got you back. It just says EC.
Okay, Alan. You got him. Okay, you got him on mute.
Yep, I'm having his team on mute. Yeah.
What's that?
No, he's not on mute.
Can?
Yes?
I'm putting you on mute just so everyone can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so if everyone can go to mute until the presentation, until Robert's done, I would certainly appreciate it. It would drown out all the background music or the sounds as well. So if we can do that, and then once he's done, I will open the floor for questions.
Yep, it's as high as you can go.
Ellen has to mute too.
Yeah, I think she's talking to Ken. Okay.
I think I'm going to use pen again. Just give me 1 sec.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. All right, let's attempt this again from where you left off, Robert. Sorry about the interruption, and continue on.
Sure, no problem. So continuing on from what I previously stated, so the applicant submitted an actual design for the addition. Based on Mr. Stafford's review, he came back.
Robert, are you still there? We lost Robert. He's a good fella. Certainly going to miss him. Anybody looking for a planning job? Brian, you come out of retirement?
Okay, well, this is the beauty of virtual technology.
Just sit tight. I think Alex is giving Robert CPR.
Maybe we can call back Don Poole.
What's that?
Maybe we can call back Don Poole.
Yeah, we have to do something.
Oh, this is live.
This is live. Clearly, we're ready for this pandemic to end and try to get back to a sense of normalcy, because this learning curve is proving to be very difficult.
We only have half of Kenny's face there. Or Kenny. Can you hear me, Kenny? Nod your head.
Is Robert back? Sorry, everybody. We're experiencing a few difficulties here. So just this is kind of the first large committee meeting we've had using WebEx. So please try to bear with us here. And our audience at home, I'm sure there's thousands listening.
Yeah, Greg, I can try to jump in there. I got his report up now.
You do? All right.
Yeah.
Greg,
I'm just going to read it though.
Okay, continue on.
All right, so the submitted plans for design review were sent to the external design reviewer, Aaron Stafford, on January 31st of 2020. Mr. Stafford provided his comments on February 12th. The main points that Mr. Stafford raised regarding the proposal was that the defining Second Empire elements be preserved on the front facade, and that the addition to incorporate these same design elements. A meeting was arranged between Mr. Stafford and the applicant to discuss the design elements. The applicant revised the proposal to address some of the design reviewer's comments pertaining to the design elements of the proposed addition, and then further clarification on the restoration and repair work was to be done to the existing front facade that is deteriorating, which was also addressed. The revised renderings and restoration work to the existing building was provided to Mr. Stafford on March 23rd, 2020, and Mr. Stafford responded with a positive recommendation on March 24th to approve comments, revisions to the site plan, restoration for the front facade, and the updated renderings for the proposed addition. So I'll go through a couple of the renderings here. So this would be the west and south elevation of the addition. Hey.
Okay. I think I just kind of got lost there, guys.
Thank God I'm back.
I'm just glad to hear your voice.
Thanks for finding them, Alex.
Did they basically just referring to the design elements, the architectural design elements they were incorporating. Have we got to that point?
I just went through your report, so if you want to start talking about the attachments, that would probably the slideshow here, that'd probably be best.
Okay, sure. So basically, just for brevity's sake, I'll just refer to what the proposed design is. So as you can see, those facades, they incorporate the same sort of Second Empire architectural elements in order, again, to keep with the existing building. The site design, so the applicant also revised the actual design of the site. They basically incorporate on-site drainage swale. This minimized the grade buildup, which was required on the west end of the property. And these changes resulted in a reduced visual impact to neighboring properties. So again, makes it more to scale and character of the area. And then in closing, the last portion of feedback we received from Mr. Stafford that the owner and applicant is incorporating as well into this application, this development. Front facade of the existing building facing Upper Prince. So essentially, this building has fallen in a bit of state of disrepair. Some of the concerns that were raised by local residents and some members of council was regards to the upkeep of and appearance of the existing building. So through consultation with Mr. Stafford and our office, the applicant has agreed to do some minor restoration work. The next slide will show that they're going to be replacing some trim board and fascia boards, while maintaining, keeping all of the unique architectural elements of the building itself. And I believe there will be some light sanding as well as some repainting. That's the conclusion of the report. Again, Mr. Stafford came back after the revisions were incorporated and is recommending that the design as it stands be approved and move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Sean, you have the applicant here, Sean Shea. Sean, you're here. Do you want to add anything to what Robert had?
No, I believe Robert captured everything. My intent is to have a beautiful building sitting on Upper Prince Street this time next year.
Okay, so thanks, Sean. So for the board members, I'm going to open the floor up, but if you have a question, just to see if we can keep this simple and for purposes of Ellen recording, if you can just kind of state your name first, just state your name, and then I'll come to you. That way Ellen has recordings of who's asking questions and then what questions, and we can kind of keep some sort of organized chaos, I guess, if you will. So I'm opening the floor to questions for either our staff or Sean Shea. Any questions from the board? Right, I'll ask another time. Is there if there's no questions, then we need somebody from the board to move.
Greg,
To accept.
Greg, it's
Yes.
Philip.
Your worship.
Sean,
Yes, Mayor.
when I looked at the drawings that Greg presented, right, this facade that's facing on to Prince Street, that's I'm just trying to get my directions here. Is this be considered as the east side? The back side is the west side? Like, I'm trying to visualize the drawings.
Correct. The facade of the front on Upper Prince Street across from the school would be considered the east. The west would be back at the backyard.
Okay, so if I just went back to the drawings, that just the back, or the next one? Yeah, no, it's where the one stairway, right here. So that's the east elevation, okay? So I'm just trying to put that in my mind. Where does that face onto? Prince Street?
Good question. That's
Yeah.
if you look at the lower left.
Where back?
If you go back, if you look at that lower left sketch, that's that. It's the joining. It's the piece of building, the 8 or 10 feet that's joining the two buildings, the old building and the new building.
Okay,
So
and
that's just the secondary stairway.
And where is that facing onto? Upper Prince or onto?
No, that's sandwiched between the two buildings.
That's actually inside the
Like
building.
it's within inside the structure, actually.
Okay, thank you. I just was trying to visualize
Yeah,
where.
no, that's not a visible stairway.
Okay.
It's contained within inside the structure.
And using this, just go back to the drawing, the layout, right here. So the driveway is on the north side, correct? Going into the back?
Actually, there's a driveway will come in like a horseshoe, similar to what it is now. I think the community was asking that one will be an entrance and the other will be the exit.
So we just go back to the last image there, Greg or Robert, where the facade is facing on to Upper Prince. The front, next one. Okay, I can tell you after teaching 20 years at Prince Street School, every day I went into the school from the parking lot. That's the facade I saw every day. So this is going to be completely redone, correct? It's going to be a whole new facade facing onto Upper Prince, and I'm sure it will add a lot of value.
Well, I'm not allowed to change anything.
But I mean, just the you're going to. What about the windows? Are you going to be doing some work on the windows and the doorway and the front porch that's there? That's going to be all.
Like we'll go. Yeah, it's a good question. We'll go over and we're going to replace anything that needs to be replaced. That if it's rotted or something of that nature, and everything will be scraped and repainted, and everything will be done. The doors will be the same color. We've identified what the colors are, and that's all part of the package. Yeah.
And Councillor Rivard, if there are wooden windows there, would they be required to replace wooden windows, or can you replace?
No, it's not a heritage. No.
It's not a heritage resource nor in the 500 lot here, so the restrictions aren't quite as stringent. I mean, certainly it'd be nice to replace wooden with wooden, but again, outside the 500 lot area, it's not required.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Unless this board determines that it should be. So, anyway, okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Sean. Any other questions from the board?
Greg Munn, I have a quick question. I think there was something about the materiality of the addition. Will it have wood clapboards or composite, or will it be vinyl?
No, I was wanting to go with the wood clapboard, which is the same as what's on the existing structure. So it's going to be 1 by 6 pine or 1/2 inch by 6 pine.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Hi, it's Chris Fournier. My question would be the front doors. Are they going to match? Or you said about painting them. Will those doors match to have it being the same? Or
I could take and match them, I guess. But as you can tell, they don't match now.
Greg Munn again. Can I just throw in? I think I just want to say what I understand is that the original house that we're looking at right here is going to be repaired and brought back, and the rotted pieces are going to be replaced, say, and it'll be painted the same. But there's not a lot of work being done on the original house. It's more it's more about the addition on the back. Yeah, these doors are what they are, and I don't see any problem in if they end up staying the way they are. We're not talking about restoring or changing the existing building. This is really about the addition at the back. The original house will be better done. It will be brought back, but not changed. Is that correct?
Greg, I think the renovating the front portion was certainly leverage for us when we were negotiating the addition on the back. So I think it was very important to the residents that the front house certainly received some attention. And, but it sounds like the applicant is going to do so. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It needs attention, but it's not going to be necessarily changed. It's going to be restored, in effect.
Restored, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the intention, I believe. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Freshened. Brought back. Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions, folks? All right.
Greg Munn, I will move approval.
Okay, thank you, Greg. So we have a motion on the floor from Greg Munn to approve. Do I have anyone to second?
I'll second it, Sharon Larder.
Okay, so seconded by Sharon Larder. Thank you, Sharon. Is there any further questions, comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay.
I'm Gillis in favor.
Okay. Opposed?
I'm opposed, Greg. It's Jason.
Okay, so Councillor Cody is opposed. Anyone else opposed? Okay, motion is carried. Ellen, you got all that?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thanks, everyone, on the first application. I'm just going to pull the agenda back up on my phone here. So the next one is for 7-9 Pownell Street. Greg Morrison, whenever you're ready, go ahead. And again, I'd ask everyone to mute their microphones on Telegram. Thank you.
All right, so this application probably looked familiar to most of you. It was originally approved, the design review, on March 1st of 2018. Revisions to said approval were approved by this board on October 10th of 2019. So since that time, the applicants have made a few additional changes. And for consistency's sake, we're bringing it back to the design review for review. So I'll go through some of the changes. Bear with me if it does get confusing. There's only a couple though. So on multiple elevations here, and you can follow along in your report, you'll see the main change at the top is the stair and elevator access to the roof has been removed. And a lot of the changes that took place as part of this design review is due to the budget that the project has created. So it has exceeded the budget that they were originally anticipating when it went out for tender. So the roof access is proposed to be removed. Secondly, there's a green roof that was originally proposed on the roof. That too is being removed. But as per our bylaw, a green roof is not required unless the 10% of the property cannot be landscaped. In this circumstance, the architect has indicated that sufficient landscaping can be provided on the property, so a green roof is not required, and now they are proposing not to have one. The second thing on the east elevation. So for your reference, this is what you previously reviewed on October 10th of 2019. So it showed the stairwell up top, and the next slide will show it being removed. And at the bottom around the garage door, it was formerly a thin brick veneer foundation around the parking garage entrance, and they are planning to remove it with a purged finish, just like the rest of the foundation on this plan. One other thing I will note, the yellow square is originally they were proposing 3 doors. They did change it to a window and a door, and staff sent an email. Staff were in touch with them for some time in November of 2019, and basically indicated that these changes were fairly minor and could be approved without going to the board. So I am bringing it to your attention, but staff took the initiative to kind of give that change a green light already. So this was the original plan, and then this is the proposed. So you'll see the 2 changes. Now the staircase is obviously removed at the top, and it's a purged finish, just like the rest of the foundation, instead of the brick. So I'll move on to the next facade here. You'll see the multiple elevations. I highlighted every elevation in this PowerPoint every time the roof access is removed. So that's the only change on the front facade. The other one, again, yellow, because staff have dealt with this issue. It was formerly 2 doors that were both identified as D10, and now they're proposing a window and a door. So again, staff indicated that that was a pretty minor change, especially for the 4th floor that was set back, but I am bringing it to your attention. So you can see it was removed on the front facade in the most current plans dated March 12th, 2020. So for the south facade, this would be facing the water. Again, the only change is the roof access. So the main change that we're really here to discuss today is on the west elevation. You can see again the roof access, but the other area is a brick was proposed around half the building before it stepped back. So the top was always aluminum siding, and the bottom, I'll say 3 floors, were brick with the cornice going along the entire facade, or half of the facade. What they are proposing now, again, to remove the staircase, but to make that entire area aluminum siding instead of the brick. The brick will still remain at the front portion of the property. So when you're walking by, you will still see some brick on the side, but for the most part, that facade that's in the 4-foot corridor, or if you remember, is going to be aluminum, or proposed to be aluminum. One other thing to note, since the plans that I gave you in your package, there was another window added, which is highlighted in the blue square. So it's in the PowerPoint, it's not in your package, so technically that is an item to approve as well. So if there's any questions, I can try to go through them, but we also have a number of the applicants online as well.
So Greg, before to the board, Steve, are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, Greg. Go ahead.
Hey, do you have anything to add, Steve? This is Steve Dunn.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn it over to Spencer for a quick comment here. Thank you.
Okay, Spencer.
Hey, Greg, we're both here, but we're staying 6 feet apart.
Oh, good. Practice the physical distancing. Great.
Yeah.
You're a lawyer.
Yeah, if I could just take a couple of minutes, and all I want to say, first of all, I want to thank the committee on behalf of Steve and I. I know we're back in front of you again. I also want to thank the mayor and Greg Rivard in particular, who we've talked to on the project, and also the staff, Alex, Todd, and Greg in particular. It's an interesting and exciting project for us. We remain very committed to it. We very much value the input of the design review committee. We're committed to good design. We're very interested in architecture and making sure that this is a building that we can be very proud of. I know that Steve's involvement with the Sims property and the Gahan property, for example, and my involvement with the property on 7 Goodwill Avenue, we really do want to have quality properties, and we appreciate the input and advice of all of you. We did tender this project back before Christmas, and as Greg Morrison indicated, we did get some bids back in early December, and they were significantly higher than we expected. Perhaps our expectations were a bit unrealistic, but certainly at that time the market was very competitive for contractors and so on. So what we did, just for context for the committee, is we asked our low bidder and David Lopez, our architect, to go back and see if they could find approximately 10% in savings off the bid price without sacrificing the quality of the project. And so David and Williams, Murphy, and McLeod, they went away and they did come back with some ideas, and the ideas that require your input and approval are now in front of you. So we very much appreciate your continued support on these matters. We're moving forward with the project, and it is our intention to get rolling as soon as the current situation passes and building permits and so on are able to be issued. And unless there are any comments or questions of me, I don't know, Steve, do you have any comments?
No, well said. Thank you.
So Steve is good, and I don't know, Greg, whether you want Dave Lopez to say anything further or how you'd like to proceed, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Spencer. I think what we'll do is we'll open the floor up for comments, and like I said, if there's any questions that Mr. Lopez can answer, then certainly we'll steer towards them. Greg, can you to make this easy? Can you go back to the initial change, and we'll talk about each change as we go, just to make sure we don't miss anything?
Sure.
Okay, so Greg, do you want to just okay? So the first change is.
Yeah, so the first one, I guess, would be the roof staircase. It's on every elevation, so, I mean... Okay, so
I guess we'll open it to the board. Is there any questions or comments with regards to this change?
Again, Councillor Rivard.
Yes, Your Worship.
I'm trying to get my, this east side faces on to the entrance going down to the yacht club, right?
This would face on Pownell Street, yeah.
On Pownell.
This is facing the courthouse.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It faces on to the courthouse, right? So the driveway going down to the yacht club would be right in between the two structures, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
And this red square is just identifying the new addition, yeah, which allows people to get up.
So, Your Worship, what the original proposal had the elevator shaft going to the top to a green roof. What the applicants are asking for is that they remove that, they have no access to the roof, and they eliminate the green roof, which they don't need from a green area aspects. They're able to provide 10%.
Thank you.
So, okay, you're welcome. Is there any other questions or comments, or is everyone okay with this change?
Could I just ask, how much would it cost to get that green roof back on there?
I would defer to David Lopez on that. David, can you comment?
Sure. The green roof alone, or the stairwell and the elevator?
Do you have to have the elevator to get up to the roof? Could you still have a green roof and have some sort of other access?
I guess you could. Or how do I explain it? Well, it was about $250,000 to add all of that, a little bit more, and there was quite a bit of savings obtained by doing that. But the thought was that if the building was going to be geared towards seniors, it just didn't make sense to not have an elevator that accessed the roof as well. And then in the building code too, it talks about barrier free. So if we tried to make the building as barrier free as it could, so it was really it was a bit of a luxury item, the whole building, but it was in the range of $250,000.
Such a lovely feature in a beautiful area. As we go more towards kind of food sustainability and being out in the environment, it's such a shame that was taken away.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was my favorite as well.
Yeah.
It's like, as a designer, it kind of, I felt terrible too.
Sharon, it's Spencer. One comment, I agree with you. I mean, it's certainly a great feature. One thing we did do, though, is we did last time we were in front of you, we did expand the size of the decks on the south side of the building in order to make sure that there was going to be a good size decks and good ability for people to to sit out and to look out over the water. So that was sort of the trade-off that we made.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so
I have a question. Brian Gillis.
Hi, Brian. Yeah, go ahead.
On the east facade where it indicates that there's 2 aluminum sidings, what type of aluminum siding is it? Are those siding that replicate a clapboard, or are they a ribbed style siding?
Yeah, it's clapboard. It's to replicate horizontal siding, like a horizontal wood siding.
And the color palette is, I don't need the exact color, but is it sort of brownish, grayish? What sort of tones?
Well, the original proposal was part of the building was going to be almost like a charcoal color, and then the remainder of the building was going to be like a white.
Okay. Your favorite colors?
Yeah.
I have no other questions, and I that's great.
Right, folks. So just backing up again. So is everyone okay with the removal of the green roof and the elevator shaft going to the rooftop?
Yes.
Okay. Greg, can you sort of moving on to one of the other changes we talked about, the down by the parking garage?
Yeah, exactly. It was proposed a brick veneer, and it would now be paraging like the rest of the foundation.
So not a large area.
No, just what's highlighted there.
Okay. All right, to the board. Does anyone have an issue with that changing?
No.
Looks good.
Okay, thank you, Greg. So Brian just talked about the siding on the other side.
Yeah, I would just make note on this elevation, the part in yellow. I mean, we did give the green light as staff, but just want to make sure that everyone on the board is still aware of it and okay with it. If there's any objections, I guess they could be raised as well.
It's fine. Thank you, Greg. Okay. Being none, so it looks like we're okay with that. Okay, so shifting over to the other side, Greg, which was the window is pretty minor. I don't think anyone has an issue with that, unless I'm wrong.
No.
Okay, so we're over to the siding. So this is what Brian just asked. So thank you, Brian. Any other questions or comments with regard to that change?
Myself, Councillor Rivard, is the brick is going to be removed and replaced with the aluminum white. Dave Lopez, is it white aluminum?
Yes, Mayor, that's correct.
And the reason I bring this up, I always go back to the home in Grand. Originally, it was to go all brick to the 6th story, and then it was decided to go with siding. I'm trying to avoid another David. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Is that that's? I know it's on the east side. That's the exposed side. It's not in between the building next door on Water Street, so it's quite exposed, correct?
No, it's the opposite, Mayor. This is right next door. This is right next door to the Heritage Building, 24 Water Street.
Okay.
So this you wouldn't. You really wouldn't see it because this whole area that's white, or not the whole area, but up to the 3rd floor would be as high as if you see the balcony on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I see it.
That's approximate height of the building next door. So it basically takes up this white part, and it actually sits forward of it. So it sits. If there's a grid line 10 there, you can see grid line 10. That's the face of the building next door, and between the two buildings, there's about a little bit more than 8 feet alleyway.
Okay.
So it would be very, and we're carrying the brick around 12 feet. So you see, we haven't eliminated all of the brick on that aspect. We've just eliminated a portion, and we feel that when you're walking down the street, you'll still see brick. Okay. And if you want to see the siding, you'll have to really poke your head in there to get a good view of it.
You have to go down into the alley to see it.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. No, I know the area. It's just, I was getting my east-west mixed up. But yeah, it's just, again, Dave, I'm just trying to avoid another green siding at the Holman Grain. Let's keep the architectural integrity of the 500 lots, brick, wood, and so forth. So thank you, Councilor Hart.
Okay, thank you. All right, folks, any other questions or comments with regards to siding?
I guess, why are we doing aluminum siding on a heritage building on the waterfront, which is prime waterfront property?
Well,
in the past, and I know it's economics, but
well, it is permitted by the building code, or not the planning bylaw permits metal siding, as long as the exposures, the fasteners are hidden and not exposed. And this was the closest thing we could get to mimic wood. And you know, I understand wood on like a 2-story building, but if you had to paint you know, a 4-story structure in you know, in 5 or 10 years, it would be quite an undertaking. So at the end of the day, we think too, it's like a more sustainable option to use the metal siding. And from a distance, you would be hard pressed to tell the difference between wood. And at the same time, if you kind of look back at the Ponnell Street elevation, where people actually could touch the building, we ended up putting like brick on the entrance and stuff to kind of keep that high quality.
I guess it's the water coming in from the water, the view that people are going to see. What color will they see? Will it look like a marine, like something that should be on the waterfront? I guess that's...
I think it will, especially from a distance.
It shouldn't look industrial, like putting it black and white is such a... I don't know. I'm sorry. Personal opinion here.
That's fine. Like we did, I think the colors, you could probably look back in when we first started the project where we had the proposed colors in some of our initial renderings. I just don't have them available. But it's but it will look like wood siding from a distance.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Yeah, I'm assuming with the just being so close to salt water and and being open, I'm guessing that would be very difficult to maintain. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Okay. Is anyone interested in putting a motion on the floor?
I'll move it.
I'll second, Greg.
Okay, who moved?
Brown. Philip Brown.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by Your Worship and seconded by Greg Munn for all the changes. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. So could I ask Steve, Spencer, when do we? I know we're in the midst of a pandemic, and as soon as we get a green light, are you looking at starting right away, ASAP? David Lopez or Spencer, Steve, what's the timeline?
Your Worship, what we would do, we're currently waiting for a building permit to start the renovation work on the heritage building next door. So the process is that we have to first bring up the fire code situation of the green building, 24 water. We're going to install a sprinkler system, and we're going to replace the current fire escape and do some other interior improvements to that building. Building is now vacant with the exception of one tenant, so we have to deal with that tenant perhaps before we start. I'm not quite sure about that. I defer to the contractors, but we're waiting for a building permit. Once we get that permit, we'll do the work at 24 water right away. If we had the permit, we would start that today, but we can't do that. Once we finish that work, we would have to get an occupancy permit from the city, and under the development agreement, once we have the occupancy permit on 24 water, we're then eligible to request a building permit for the new build.
Okay.
And so, you know, I'm not quite sure what the timelines would be, but, you know, assuming we got rolling sometime next month, then the 24 water is probably going to take a couple of months to deal with. And so, you know, we could be getting rolling this in the early part of the summer or midsummer, perhaps July.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Councillor Rivera.
You're welcome, and rest assured you'll have this again the support of the planning staff, and they'll work with you to make sure that we're able to maintain a timeline for you guys as well.
Thank you.
All right, moved and seconded. If there's no further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Okay, seeing nothing opposed, so unanimous in favor. Thank you. Ellen, you got all that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Spencer, Stephen, Mr. Lopez.
Thanks, David, Spencer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, folks, we're moving on to the Fitzroy Parkade, and Greg Morrison, if you have this one as well.
Yeah, so this application was obviously before the board last month. At that time, it was discussion purposes only to see kind of the board's opinion on if it should proceed with design review. At that meeting, you well know it was recommended to go to design review. So we sent it to the design reviewer, who was Robert Matthews. And he gave some comments about ways to improve the facade while retaining the existing structure, I guess, or the proposed structure. And I can go through some of those changes as well. I will have to switch out my screen to a different document here, but essentially what they indicated he indicated on March 18th, 2020 was the existing architectural style is a bit dated and was wondering if the proponent would consider looking at an addition of facade treatment at the lower two levels that could emanate the facade and make a contextual reference to the scale of the buildings further along Kent Street. So he basically said, he concluded by saying that there is now an opportunity to improve the building's aesthetics in a rather bland commercial area. So essentially, as I mentioned, the structure and the precast materials weren't as much of a concern, but a way to give additional improvements to the first two floors. So I'll just go through this quick just for a recap. So this is the existing parking structure, and essentially they'd be looking to create an addition almost up to the property line, almost up to the sidewalk, which you can see on the right-hand side. So this would be the finished or constructed parkade. And same thing here. This is the existing in white, and the gray represents the new addition. Same thing. You can see on the left side, this is existing, right side would be proposed. So you can kind of see there's a green space here between the existing building and the sidewalk, and that would no longer be present. Proposed facade looking like the existing facade. And I'm just going to jump out here for a second. Bear with me.
Hello, Greg. There's Greg.
Oh, Philip, big screen.
I should have Sir John A. behind me.
So this is Mr. Matthews attached two documents, I guess, to his design review report, and I will try to open this for you. And essentially, he was just trying to give different ways, different examples, I guess, of what a two-story facade treatment could look like. He didn't give any specific requirements, I guess.
Oh.
All right, so I'll just go through these slowly. They are attached in your package, so you do have them separately if you would like to look, but I'll just click through here very slowly.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm not an expert to explain what all the materiality and the way these are created, so I will just click through and you guys can use your imagination.
Greg, when you were talking to the design reviewer, is it, or I don't know if you've done the research, but the additional costs associated to doing something like this, do you have any idea what it would be?
I do not know.
Okay.
All right, so those were a number of the different structural changes. So there's 6 in total there, and he also came up with a couple artistic ideas, I guess, which I'll show you as well. I will make note that staff have reviewed, I guess, both ideas, and were more in favor of the first facade treatments instead of the artistic treatments, I guess. So different artistic ways of sprucing up the building.
Looks good. So is there a reason, Greg, why staff would prefer the other versus the? Yeah,
I think one of the main in discussions, I guess, that one of the main artistic features that Mr. Matthews proposed was, I guess, historical photos of the, I guess, Kent Street and surrounding area. And when talking to primarily our heritage officer and other staff, it was preferred to avoid that kind of situation where you would kind of highlight the previous photos of the area on the building, and rather create more of a contemporary structural change instead of an artistic of the past, I guess. If that makes any sense. But so essentially, we sent all this information to the applicants at CADC, and they responded. They didn't propose a concrete change, I guess, but what they indicated is that they're sending a letter to the planning department to consider issuing a building permit for the construction of the foundation and the precast structure. This permit would be conditional upon the city and CADC preparing the proposed design changes to the Kent Street facade of the parkade, and work closely with the design review committee as well as the city's arts advisory group in order to achieve a balanced and affordable approach to this undertaking. So in light of the foregoing, staff are recommending that a permit be issued for the structure itself. However, the condition be that they have to submit revised drawings for the screening of the Kent Street facade, which is generally in accordance with the comments from the design reviewer, and that can have input from the Art Advisory Board within 3 months of the resolution of COVID-19 restrictions being lifted. So essentially, the applicants as well as the design reviewer indicated that the building, I guess, itself didn't have issues, but the additional treatment to it was something that needed to take place. So essentially, the applicants are looking to construct the building and work with staff and you folks within the next 3 months to create some kind of design feature. What that is at this time, I'm not sure, but those are the examples that Mr. Matthews provided and were given to the applicant as well.
Greg, just before I open it to the floor, so are we going to be waiting for the applicant to come back with a design for us to review and critique, or are we going to kind of give some kind of insight during this meeting today to send back before they embark on this?
Yeah, I mean, the applicants are in this meeting. I'm sure they would welcome any suggestions that you folks have based upon the photos you've seen. But essentially, I guess what staff's looking for here is, I guess, a couple options. Whether you approve the building, I'll approve staff to issue the building permit subject to design changes being presented to you folks within 3 months. I mean, there's lots of other options. You could reject the building permit and wait for the design changes to come in. But I think
the design reviewer and staff agree that the building's not the issue. It's how to spruce it up. So.
Okay, thank you, Greg. I'm going to open it to the floor. So if there's any questions, floor is yours.
Greg, if I could interject for a moment.
Oh, sure. Yes, Ron Waite.
Just for clarity here, the part of the reason that this building looks the way it is also the functionality of a parking garage. And these open, if we do anything that's going to limit the fresh air circulation within the garage by obstructing those openings, we're going to have to go back and look at whether or not the safety of the building and whether or not we're going to have to add exhaust systems inside the building to meet the standards, because basically the first floor of that garage is the most heavily traveled area, so it would have by reasonable deduction the highest level of carbon monoxide in the whole building would be in that area. And if you consider the Pownal Parkade versus the Fitzroy Parkade, the Pownal Parkade is much more enclosed, and we have to have, we've installed exhaust systems within that parkade to do that. If we were to minimize these openings, we can do things to the exterior walls of the building, but if we're doing anything that impairs the airflow in the garage, we're going to have to go back and have an examination of whether or not we need to put an exhaust system inside the garage. So that's part of why the artistic side of adding panels or something like that to the exterior walls of the building is a much more attractive option, I would suggest, for all concerned, because if we have to start adding exhaust systems and everything else, the cost of the aesthetics to the outside will be minor in comparison to the other.
Okay, thanks, Ron. All right, we'll open up to the board. If anybody has any questions for staff or for Ron, please ask.
Greg Munn here. So,
oh, just 1 second, Sharon. Greg Munn first, then we'll go to move to Sharon. Okay.
Yeah.
Greg.
No. Yeah. So just in a nutshell, they want approval to build the structure as is. We've been through this. You know, we're going to reuse the facade. Just move it forward, and it's just about how to treat the openings in the wall or to layer it up. So for one thing, I want to say I think it's a good thing to bring the building forward. It's always good to keep the facade face aligned. I think this is actually going to be better on the site to fill in the gap so the building isn't set back anymore. And I just want to comment on, adding mechanical systems. That's just anti-sustainability. Fresh air, natural ventilation is the preferred way to go. And I would agree and support that the openings in the front, although it would be nice if they were trellised or perforated panels or something like that, that I would support that the openings are not impeded so that you would need a mechanical system. I think that would be just the greener thing to do. So don't have a problem with it moving forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Sharon, you have a question?
I thought at the last meeting we weren't pro moving the building forward towards the street. Was that correct?
No, I think that was a foregone conclusion. I think everyone is okay with moving the building forward. Is what the facade would look like, because it's so close to the street. I think is a lot of the questions.
Is there any space for greenery to be put in front?
There won't be a lot.
No.
This is to create further parking for Charlottetown as opposed to surface parking.
Yeah, but it's also in the 500 lots. I'm trying to get as much greenery into the city as possible and hide these ugly structures. So saying your structure is ugly, but it is a parking garage, and it just seems to be going against what we're kind of hoping to get is more green space in the city, although it's functional, I know.
Councillor Rivera.
Yes, sir, Your Worship.
Yeah, Sharon, I think we discussed it at the last meeting that when the Fitzroy Parkade was built, the south side facing onto Kent Street was to be a construction of a building, a commercial building. That didn't go ahead because of issues related to health and safety. And so it was to the new build, whether it was going to be commercial or not, was to go to the sidewalk to line up with Zellers and all the other facilities or all the other buildings on that side of the street. So it was always there in the plan. Just now it's going to be a parkade, and I think Brian Gillis brought up what will that facade look like in the 500 lot, and that's where I was voting. That's how I vote on what kind of design we would have.
Yes, it was originally going to be commercial properties on the first floor.
Yeah, it was going to go to the 3 stories.
Yes, we can't do that.
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Brian, I know that you had a lot of questions during our last committee meeting. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there anything you'd like to add in this, or ask? Get clarification from Mr. Waite.
I do have a couple of specific questions.
Okay, floor is yours.
Okay, the first one is the stairway that gives access to the building. That's staying in its place, is that correct?
Ron, you want to answer that?
I'm not sure if NASME is on the call, and it would be subject to my verifying it, but I believe that's correct, Brian.
Because my examination of the drawing shows that that's going to remain in its current location. And there's a wall that would enclose the garage on the east side. And what I see in Stresscron's drawings is that wall is made up of some type of egg crate type opening concrete panel. Is that correct?
Brian, I would, in terms of that level of detail on the design, I would have to get back to NASME, but I believe that's accurate.
Well, in what was sent out with the package of drawings, there is a section, I guess, on Stresscron's plans that shows that there's a new panel that is being fabricated. So I'm just, am I correct in my interpretation of that?
Yes, there is a new panel. It's whether or not it's the egg crate design, because I know that there was some question from the fire folks as to whether or not that was going to be an egg crate or it was going to be a solid wall, because for fire protection reasons. And I'd have to take it as an undertaking to come back to you on as to what they finally arrived at. But it says in NASME's notes here, it says the existing wall of the parkade is currently solid wall due to the proximity of the parkade to the parking property line. In order to compensate for the blocking of the air walls and the circulation, spandrel beams, which will be supporting the double T's with the reduced height. Place the galvanized. I think we've had to extend some galvanized railing and stuff like that, but there is the wall, I believe, remains there, or is going to be put there. Brian, I'd have to check on whether it's a crate or solid.
Councillor Rivera, NASME is online. Councillor Rivera.
Okay, his
image is on the screen.
Can you hear me? I don't.
There's NASME. There's NASME.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. NASME, did you hear the questions that Brian had?
Brian, you're referring to the west wall, not the east wall, right?
Well, the drawings are sideways. You can't put up on the screen.
Okay. You're standing on Kent Street looking at the garage. the one on the left-hand side in front of the existing stairs, is that the one you were referring to? Yeah, that would have, it wouldn't be crate, it would be window opening style in order to create more fresh air circulation.
But are those actually fabricated already?
They are everything is fabricated, all the precast elements fabricated.
And that really comes to my sort of concern is that we've dealt with two other clients today who've come to the city with projects, and they've been very forthright in terms of trying to work within the design parameters and before starting construction, deal with the design issues and very subtle design issues. And I see a problem here in terms of the process where we still don't have anything from a design perspective to give confidence that there is the sensitivity of how this is going to impact the streetscape. We have a perspective that shows, it's on the screen right now, that shows what the existing image is. And we have engineering drawings that shows what's being fabricated and what's being applied for in terms of a building permit. We have a report from a design reviewer that suggests that there are things that can be done in a sensitive way to both accommodate the issues of ventilation, as well as to try to come up with some response to how this is going to fit into the streetscape. And I don't think it's our job at this level to make the final conclusion, because the client, which is the city of Charlottetown, still does not have a design proposal for how to accommodate the streetscape impact.
Nazmi here, if I may, Brian, with all due respect, this parking garage built in Charlottetown, Chicago, or Ontario, or anywhere else, all the structural elements you're going to see will remain the same. It will not change. What Mr. Robert Matthews from Ontario suggested, the architect, that adding elements to the facade in order to create some contemporary look rather than just precast concrete. And I think that's a fantastic idea to do so. We all in agreement with it. Other than that, just to step back, as I said again, all the elements that you see in this structure is structural element, cannot be modified, cannot be changed, regardless where that parking garage is being built. However, we can add elements that was suggested by the architect from Ontario that can modify or complement or create a different aesthetic to the facade of the parkade. Does that make any sense? I'm not sure how can you change, the beam has to have a beam, a column is a column, regardless where it's going to be built, that structure will remain the same.
I think you're on mute, Brian. There you go.
You're giving an engineering response to a design question, and I think it should be a design solution rather than just the engineering aspect. But I'm not going to belabor that point. The issue is that the design reviewer has suggested that there are things that can be done. And in your letter response to CADC, it states that COVID-19 has something to do with coming up with a solution. I don't see why you have to wait 3 months. I think there could have been an earlier sort of response to mitigate what is really still an unresolved design solution.
Do you agree that the elements suggested by Mr. Matthews can be attached to the facade? As far as I know, regardless whether an engineer or architectural issue, whatever you see in the parkade now cannot be changed. I'll say it again, regardless where the parkade is built. You want to close the wall and make it look like a building, that's okay. It can be done still, as Ron indicated. And then we can add mechanical system to to deal with ventilation issue, which goes against the sustainability issue that the city of Charlottetown is trying to push forward. If you want to add screens, mesh, contemporary art to it, it can be done at any stage after the structural elements are erected. And basically just moving forward. Really, the landscape is not going to change other than it's going to move forward by 20, 30 feet towards King Street.
Right.
Right, folks. Brian, do you have any other comments?
I'm looking for a design presentation that illustrates how the parkade can be integrated into the streetscape of Kent Street. And that is not my question as to the timing or the constraints that the city has put on itself by not dealing with that in an earlier stage of the project.
Okay, so Nazmi and Ron, when can this board city expect to receive an architectural drawing of what the facade will look like? Can you give us a guideline as to when we can expect to see that?
Good question.
Well, basically, guys, what we're trying to do here is that we want to have this as a collaborative approach, and to do a collaborative approach, contrary to whatever Brian has to say, is a little difficult to do when you can't go and physically work around the structure and stuff like that. This is what we're saying is, and I will tell you from a CADC perspective, we'll do whatever the city wants us to do and spend as much money as the city's got to spend. But what we're saying is, it seems to me to make more sense if the structure is not going to change, that we figure out and work together with this committee and with the Arts Advisory Committee to come up with something that's tasteful and meets the needs of the city. If you want us to go away and hire an architect to come back with some different designs, of which we'll then have to go through a critiquing again to understand whether or not they're acceptable. I'm just simply saying that I think it's a matter of us working collaboratively to try to come up with a solution, but not hold the project up for an inordinate amount of time. And I will tell you, from a practical point of view, now that the precast concrete has been finished, the meter is going to start running on the city very shortly in terms of the building of the precast. So the longer we wait, the more money it's going to cost the city. If that's the city's wishes, then we're more than prepared to do that. But I do think that there's an opportunity to us to work collaboratively with not only this committee, but the Arts Advisory Committee, and say there might be a number of different opportunities here to come up with something that's quite unique. But if it's a architect to be hired to come up with some designs, then that certainly we'll take direction.
Councilor Rivera.
Just, Your Worship, just one quick second. So, Ron, just to follow up my question. So, I mean, I have zero issue with collaboration. I mean, the question again becomes, if the board agrees to say yes to moving forward with the engineering piece, again, when can this board expect to see something on the architectural side when it comes to the facade?
We had suggested 3 months just simply to provide a reasonable period of time to go through a collaboration, but we can basically we'll take direction from you folks. If you want it sooner than that, then I would suggest that if we're doing it collaboratively, it's going to take a minimum of a month to 6 weeks to go through various phases. But
Your Worship, just one more question before you ask.
Go ahead.
So the engineering piece of this, Nazmi, how long will this take to push the parkade out to the street side, complete the engineering side?
Construction?
Yeah.
It's probably going to take 4 months. Like initially, we had it started middle of April, finished 1st of July. So now we lost a month, so it's going to be like end of July. If we start tomorrow, let's say.
Yes. The one thing that we want to ensure, Ron, in this case, is that if it takes 4 months, we want to make sure that we leave enough time that when the conceptual drawings come back, that this board has enough time to critique, add their thoughts, and if it needs to go back, that we have that time, that there's not this gap in between the construction, the end of construction, and the facade. We kind of want to see it all flow together, if possible.
But Nazmi here again. But think of whatever we have there as the skeleton of whatever you wish to add to it later on. It would not prevent anyone from doing whatever you like to do with the facade, whether you put brick all the way from top to bottom, add in windows, add in artwork.
Oh, we understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally understand. That's why I'm keeping the question separate from engineering versus that of the next part. I just want to make sure that they coincide with each other as closely as possible from a timing perspective. Your Worship, you have a question?
Yes. It's great to see the engineering and the architectural forces not agree with each other, because that's typical, as Nazmi knows. But when I voted for this design review, it was to look at the facade. As Nazmi said, structurally, you can't change anything. It's the precast elements, as I said to Ron Waite and others, it's like a Lego puzzle. So you're just now extending that Lego structure out onto Kent Street. So that work can continue, but the design for the facade, that's what I'm concerned about. And I sent Greg Morrison some photos of a facade design of a parkade in Old Quebec. And maybe sometime down the road, Greg can email them out. But again, we're adding something to it to make it more presentable from the sidewalk when you're heading east on Kent Street past the parkade and also Veterans Affairs. So the structure, it's not going to change because of the facade design. And Nazmi knows I'm not an engineer, but I have a brother and a nephew who are engineers, so you don't want to get engineers all in the same room arguing over this issue. Let's just, again, I'm willing to get the project going and look at the facade. And Robert Matthews, is he with N45 Architecture out of Ottawa? Nazmi?
I'm not sure what the company name. Greg would know probably.
But anyways, very qualified. Very qualified firm to do a facade design for this parkade. Thank you, Councillor Rivard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, folks, any other questions or comments? All right, so we need a motion. I think what's being proposed by staff is that we go ahead and issue a permit with the expectation that we have some design for the facade back to us within a 3-month period. I think is that right, Greg?
That's correct.
Or less.
Or less. Correct. But that's what's being proposed by staff, correct?
Yeah, 3 months once the restrictions are lifted.
Yeah. I'll move it.
Okay, so Your Worship moved. Anybody to second it?
I will second it.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes.
Right. So moved and seconded. Is there any other questions or comments?
Question called.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none. So motion carried unanimously. I need a motion to adjourn, folks.
Greg Munn, motion to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I think it was pretty successful. And
thank you, Greg. Well done. Really good. Good job on this. This Cisco, I like this system.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship.
Have a great day. Stay safe. Be
Bye,
smart.
everybody.
Stay smart.
I know.